Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Akwaras, distinguished guests, and as they say in Ghana, all protocols observed. Considering the other speakers who have gone before me in this series, and given the illustrious list of Akwaras across the globe, I really do appreciate being asked to participate in this event and to be selected to give this keynote speech. As some of you may know, and I see a lot of my classmates in the room, I graduated in Achimota back in the early 80s, a very tumultuous time in our nation's history. Since then, I've had the good fortune, based upon my career and experience in Achimota, to travel the world with a career spanning several decades. And I've had the good fortune of meeting with several world leaders, presidents, prime ministers, heads of state. And I've picked up a few things along the way about good governance and how countries are transformed and work. However, for the most part of this decade, I have been intimately linked to Ghana through business, philanthropy, investment banking, and the arts. And I hope to bring some of this experience to bear on today's talk. I've been asked to speak on the topic of, beyond the talk, positioning the nation for a prosperous future, or in my parlance, how and what we do with what it is we have today to ensure our country is fit for purpose so that we and our children can compete in the future in the global economy. In looking for inspiration for tonight's speech, I turn to my books. And those of you who have come around know that I am a ferocious reader. My mantra of reading is best described by an expression coined by Charlie Munger, who is the vice chairman of Warren Buffett's company, Berkshire Hathaway. And he says, he who does not read has no advantage, but he who cannot read. So ladies and gentlemen, please. And looking for inspiration, I remember a passage that I read in a book called Interventions by the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan. Please bear with me, it's a little long, but I think it is this one. For any hope of achieving some form of economic development, communities need a combination of several different types of capital, including human, physical, and natural capital. The essential components of these take many forms. Healthy individuals free from malnutrition with the skills to productively engage in the economy, asserting women's rights to determine their own reproductive destiny, facilities for commercial activities such as transport for agriculture, or facilities and machinery for other sectors, infrastructure, including transport networks, power supplies, and sanitation and communication systems, needs healthy soils and ecosystems that sustain human communities, public institutional capacity in the form of commercial law, judicial and security services, underpinning peaceful societies of commerce and labor, and finally knowledge in the form of scientific expertise and skills required to raise productivity and boost other areas of capital. Kofi Annan did Ghana proud at the United Nations during his tenure as Secretary General, and this statement is a very aspirational and worthy to be used for achieving not just economic development, but broader development of a nation. Today I'm going to offer my views and some recommendations on the 5 tenets that will create and support the most powerful tool, I believe, for positioning our nation for a prosperous future. A citizenry empowered through a shared vision to work together to harness and achieve our full potential. Each of these tenets requires us to make fundamental changes to accelerate nation building and to achieve the goal envisioned by the title of this talk. Most of these requirements actually lie completely within our control and within the borders of this country. These 5 tenets are having a vision clearly articulated by our leaders, having a plan to execute that vision, having the political environment that enables that vision to be executed, having a well-educated workforce to execute the plan, and having the necessary infrastructure to support it. To put it simply but bluntly, it's impossible to build a prosperous nation without competent and effective leadership and the commitment of every one of us, or at least most of us, as citizens of Ghana, to adhere to these 5 tenets. So let me elaborate on each of these. A vision. May I be so bold as to suggest a path towards a vision? Any vision that is crafted and articulated by our leaders must be clear enough for all the people to understand, and if they choose, get behind. For example, no matter what your views are of him or his vision, the American president is focused on making America great again. I'm not 100% certain all Americans are behind it, but it's well articulated. Closer to home, what we Achimotans say, that's all we want. It is our vision, it is well articulated and clearly understood. A national vision must state, in my opinion, where we are going as a nation, which is the destination, how we will get there as a nation, which is the journey, and what we will find and achieve when we get there, which is the prize. The vision must be underpinned by a set of values, and once developed, our leader or leaders must be the pipelines or evangelists to take us to the promised land. At the moment, when it comes to a vision for Ghana, I'm writing a little bit of theme tune from Osofadas. And I would like, if you don't mind, some of you to join me in singing it. And listen to the words. We are going, heaven knows where we are going. We know we will. Listen carefully. We will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there. We know we will. And finally, it will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there. We know we will. And I guess my question is, where is there? You know, if the city of Accra is the largest city closest to both the equator and the Greenwich Meridian, and if Ghana has the friendliest people on the African continent, and if Ghana has one of the most benign and stable political environments, and aspirationally we wish to have the easiest and friendliest investment environment in Africa, so may I be so bold as to propose that our vision should be something like to be the industrial and technology gateway to Africa, or in short, to be the gateway for Africa. After I've written this speech and since I started, I also realized that there is a video that has gone viral very recently, and a strapline has also emerged in that, as described by the current president of Ghana, His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, and he talks about Ghana beyond need. So I think there are a number of options we have, but we really should make it a strapline and take it forward. We need a vision that is inspirational and aspirational. The vision must be expressed everywhere as an easy-to-remember strapline or mantra, in as many forms and ways as is necessary, until everybody in the country becomes a believer and is pulling in the same direction to make it a reality. Once we have this vision, we need a plan to execute the vision. Colin Powell, in his infamous leadership presentation, which you can find on the internet, says, a great leader has a vision and surrounds himself with people who are smarter than him to execute. And the one thing I'm 100% sure of is that those smarter people are sitting in the room, listening on the radio, or watching on television, like the NT Ghana. I don't worry about that at all. I'm not really going to talk too much about the detail of the plan because I'll be here for a very long time. But all I will say is that when it comes to the plan, we don't need to think too hard or too much about it. What we need is a small task force, a competently formed, committed and representative group to develop this plan. But I'd like to focus on two overarching factors that currently hinder the execution of such a national plan. The first is our current political system does not allow for long-term planning. Our governments change every 4 years, even when the same political party wins election. This has historically resulted in the upending of any long-term plans. This is a fact. We're going to create a nation-state which can compete in the 21st century. This habit must change. Einstein defines insanity as doing the same thing over and over again. Interestingly, if you put the manifestos of the two main political parties together, There's no real difference. They both have a Northern Development Plan. They both want to increase the power out into the country and integrate power in the region. They both have an Operation Feed Yourself program for growth for food and jobs. They both have a plan to upgrade the educational system and improve infrastructure. And they both subscribe to an improvement-based industrialization plan. I could go on, but I think I've made the point. So my recommendation is actually to get the 2 or 3 main development beings of both political parties, put them in a room, sit them down together in a non-partisan fashion, work together to integrate all manifestos into a single long-term overarching plan to move our country forward. This plan must be broken down into electoral cycle deliverables so that regardless of who comes to power, you know the projects that you're going to do. And I believe that you can break this down into, do it for the next 4 electoral cycles, so we have a 16-year plan that can move forward. I honestly believe that this is the only way to get out of our current short-term planning groundwork game. The second factor that has hindered the putting in place of an effective nation-building plan is that we're still using inherited political structures, initially set up under the era of over 60 years ago, and at best we mildly tweak them. As a result, we have consistently underperformed our expectations and never really reached our full potential as a nation. This too must change, and it leads me to turn to the political environment that we need to support this plan. I am a fierce Pan-Africanist who believes in self-help being the starting point of any mission. There's a wealth of knowledge out there about political systems and strategies for development. Huge debates rage about which political systems and structures are most effective. I've read a lot about this, I've read them on my travels, and I've seen some of these systems in action. Benign dictators versus democrats, Western models versus Chinese models, autocrats versus liberal societies, etc., etc. We actually need a political system that truly empowers our citizens, and the best way I believe to do this is through devolution. The effective transfer or delegation of power and responsibility by a central government to the lower levels, such as regional and local administrations. I do have some thoughts about how we can ensure more competent and effective regional, district, or local governments. Before I look at these, I'd like to take a newer and closer look at the political system we had before colonialism, which is our chieftaincy system. I strongly believe that this system is one of the missing pillars of our strong and effective nation state. In its most basic form, a hereditary leader historically manages the assets of the people for the benefit of the people, for the length of time that he is in power. He or she is in power. He or she has a group of elders who advises him on all matters, including the settlement of disputes which is done in a public forum. The foundation, which is the foundation of our modern day judiciary. Interestingly, chiefs actually never run businesses. Rather, they issue concessions for mining and leases for land and farming, and the taxes that they gathered from these went to fund the building of infrastructure and also the provision of an army to provide security for the people. There's an interesting aside, for those of you who don't know, the formation of the Boy Scouts, global Boy Scouts movement at the turn of the 20th century, was born out of observations made by Lord Baden-Powell when he came to fight the Ashantis. He was amazed by the formidable organization and strength of the youth brigades, part of the Ashanti army. He studied and documented them closely, and went back to England to start the movement. This is an example of how the West adopted the best parts of our own traditional model of government. We seem to allow this political structure to lapse as a true effective force for nation building. Among the many probable reasons why chieftaincy is not an integral part of our current political system is that our previous colonial rulers wanted to speak directly to the people, and actually Kwame Nkrumah wanted to do the same, bypassing the true leaders of that time, which were the chiefs. I would humbly suggest it may be time to review, revive, adapt this traditional political system as an integral part of our more formal and adoptive political structure, to make it an aspect of a devolved government structure. So I have some questions for us to ponder. Should there be a new chamber in Parliament representing chieftaincy? Should we have clearly defined formal roles and responsibilities for our chiefs? Should we insist on a full audit of all the assets that our chiefs inherited from the sea and have regular audits during their tenure? Should we provide formal governance and leadership training for our chiefs and for their elders and advisors? Should we formally include and measure clear and measurable economic and social development plans as part of their responsibility? Should we demand full transparency over all their commercial dealings and have in place a formal structure that allows the people to hold them to account. I believe we should, and now is the time to do so. As I touched on earlier, another aspect of our current political system that requires transformation is our local government structure. The appointment of district and municipal officials by the state disempowers the very people such officials are meant to serve. I would strongly advocate for local government officials to be elected and not appointed. Electing such officials would open up positions to a wider group of citizens and allow the better measurement of their capabilities. It would also require them to be more accountable for their use of city, municipal, and district budgets. We need to ensure they're not left on their own to manage these new responsibilities, but to have the same sort of checks and balances that I suggested for a revised chieftaincy system. The two revamped political structures, the chieftaincy and local government, would work together with clearly distinguished and divided roles and responsibilities to ensure that the national plan is executed at the district and local levels for the benefit of citizens. All these suggested changes to our political system require us as individual citizens to act. Those of us sitting in the room and those listening in. As Arnold Schwarzenegger, the famous bodybuilder turned governor of California, said, "No one ever got big by watching me pump iron." We should not continue sitting and marveling and pontificating about other people's models of government or what our government should or shouldn't do. We should actively take steps, each of us, to make sure that the necessary changes are made to our own model to accelerate, right-size, and reposition our own system for growth and to compete globally. Once we have a vision, a plan to execute that vision, and a political system that enables such execution, we need people to execute the plan, a qualified workforce. Now I want to talk about how we acquire such a workforce, and it's all about education. Ladies and gentlemen, we are building our nation on quicksand if we don't address the glaring deficiencies in our current educational system. Let me throw a few statistics at you. There are about 2.2 million children in preschool, 4 million in primary school, 2.2 million in secondary school, and about 400 in tertiary education. 20% of those not in tertiary are educated privately, and about half of those educated educated privately. With approximately 8.5 million children in school in formal education, even with class sizes of 40, we would need 200,000 teachers. 200,000 well-trained, well-paid teachers to do a proper job. Ladies and gentlemen, the reality is nowhere near this target, and I'm not even sure we have the money to pay for all of that. So what we need to do is to ensure that we do not end up with one or more generations of unemployed young people because they're not taught properly. I have a 4-point remedy for those. First, it's time to put our minds to implementing some of the many technology solutions available. Give our children tablets with read-only curriculums, so even if the teachers don't learn, the kids can still learn. This demands a new kind of teaching environment and focus. However, we're up for the challenge, are we not? Tools like Khan Academy, YouTube, Coursera are all free and readily available. What we really need to do is design relevant and fit-for-purpose modules for our children, bearing in mind what the challenges and job requirements are of today and the future. Secondly, based on the numbers I described, about 700,000 children every year leave formal education. The private sector, formal jobs created are somewhere between 100 and 150,000. So it's about 500,000 children who leave formal education every year, who are going to work for themselves. We have to accept that. Therefore, in those of us who finished O-levels or did our common entrance, the skills that we acquired in school gave us no preparation whatsoever for working for ourselves. So we need to give them tools like accounting, verbal reasoning, and technical training. We also need to be teaching them citizenship and civic responsibility. Most of these children will work for themselves, so it's imperative that we impart knowledge which allows them to do so. Thirdly, we need to address the glaring misalignment between the fact that at least half of the people in this country take their earnings from the land, from agriculture, and yet only 3% of our output from the education If you're running a business, you wouldn't do it that way. Let us urgently do something about this. And fourth, like most people, I'm convinced, actually I know, that STEM is the way forward: science, technology, engineering, and maths. Especially when it comes to the careers of new kids in the new economy that's out there. We therefore need a radical overhaul and re-engineering of our educational system. My personal belief is that as a state, we should only pay for an educational system that gives us 50% STEM graduates and 30% agricultural graduates. This is a hard choice to make, but this is a request we should make of our educators, and they in turn should be given the time and the funds to make the necessary changes. Ladies and gentlemen, nation building is hard. It is arduous and it's challenging. It demands of us a laser-like focus on the prize as defined by our vision. We need focused and dedicated individuals to shape a plan that turns our vision into practical and measurable reality. Revitalizing our education system is the only way forward. The last of the 5 tenets, by no means the least, is ensuring that we have an infrastructure to support the plan. The basic infrastructure requirements such as efficient ports, roads, power, airports go without saying. In my view, they're always talked about and they're continuously talked about. And we talked about them to death. And we need to just get beyond the talk and start executing. The infrastructure I want to talk about today is technology. We can never overstate its importance if we're going to build a nation for the future. Some of the important changes going on right now, like the biometric national ID system, the GPS-based arresting system, the paperless ports, and hopefully soon allow us to stay relevant in the global economy. The informal sector, which is estimated to be about 40% of the country's economy, needs to shrink and shrink fast. I'll briefly expand on 2 ways in which technology can support execution of the plan. First, the implementation of the addressing and national IT systems will open up new revenues for revenue collection, including low-cost property and business taxes. The system will also make it easier to devolve revenue collection to local governments, all the more reason for competent and accountable local government officials to show that all the income generated is used appropriately and efficiently for the benefit of the people. Secondly, technology is a part of the solution to another major national problem. Our current land system needs urgent reform. Land is one of our most prized assets, yet it's one of the most misused or even worst abused assets. Unique ownership and the transfer of such ownership is so challenging that it's become a drag on our national development and one of the key and significant hindrances to growth. I believe we should successfully adopt a method being piloted at the moment in the Republic of Georgia, and I'll give you a quote from the chairman of the country's National Agency of Public Registry. By building a blockchain-based property registry and taking full advantage of the security provided by the blockchain technology, the Republic of Georgia can show the world that we are a modern, transparent, and corruption-free country that can lead the world in changing the way land titling is done and pave the way to additional prosperity for all. We should be the second. The reform of our land registry, the digitization of our land records, and maybe even the adoption of blockchain technology to crowd-validate ownership is key to all this. It's time for our leaders, both political and traditional, to step up, change the basis of land title and tenure, leapfrog existing systems, and bring us with speed and urgency to the 21st century. This will allow us to better collateralize our land assets, borrow and lend against them, and parcel large blocks of land together for industrial and agricultural development. Other technology innovations I'll touch on are things like cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, electronic signatures in the cloud. And I can see Bryce Miles and Nigel in the audience already. But if we don't get our heads around these new exciting areas, especially for the young people, and incorporate them into our national fabric, we will be permanently left behind. This leads me to a side point I'd like to make here. Looking around the world with the exception of the young kids to my right, I'm guessing that the average age in this room is at least twice the median age of this country. For those of you who don't know, the median age in this country is 20.1 as per the 2010 census. And it might even be lower right now, given birth rates. I noticed that even though they form at least half of the population, and we are talking about the future, they don't seem to have invited to speak at the series. I'm sure it's a simple oversight rather than intentional. I hope we can have an opportunity to do so, and we'll give them an equal, or dare I say, even more prominent influence than any other civil initiatives. Not only do we need to hear their views on the issues and challenges of our times, and their suggested recommendations and solutions, but they are our leading experts on new and future technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, I started off my speech by saying that the changes I am proposing under the 5 tenets will create the most powerful tool for building and sustaining our nation for a prosperous future. Empowering citizens who, inspired, energized, and led by a shared vision, work together to harness their ideas, talents, and opportunities to achieve our country's potential. However, the start of the journey to the destination and the priors require courage and introspection. It requires us to take ownership of our problems and the solutions to them. We must courageously look out to our shortcomings and not seek to justify them with wishful thinking. We must come up with bold and innovative solutions suited to us and not expect others from other countries to bring us answers. This journey also demands a single-minded focus on project management, and I cannot stress that enough. Without this, we will fail. We need competent project managers who, with the necessary mandate, tools, and support, can shape a plan and deliver on the tasks for developing and coordinating the execution of national vision and plan. Finally, the journey of transformation needs each and every one of us on board, doing our bit to get to the destination. We need to hark back to the processes that made our nation great and strong, and be inspired and energized to transform our current systems into a conducive political, economic, and social environment in which the nation as a whole thrives. JFK once said many years ago, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." I conclude with these famous words from our founder, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, or is it founders? Which are even more poignant and thought-provoking today than they were when we spoke to them over 60 years ago. Countrymen, the task ahead is great indeed, and heavy is responsibility. And yet it is a noble and glorious challenge. A challenge which calls for the courage to dream, the courage to believe, the courage to dare, the courage to do, the courage to envision, the courage to fight, the courage to work, and the courage to achieve the highest excellencies and the fullest greatness of man. Dare we ask for more? Ladies and gentlemen, let us rise to this challenge and transform Ghana to make our nation great and strong.